It's good afternoon, Dr. Michelle McQuaid. Thank you for joining us here at Yellow Shelf.
Joanna, so great to be with you.
Congratulations. You have a new book that came out this week. I've got a copy here, The Perfectly Imperfect Little Girl. Tell us all about it. What do we need to know about this gorgeous new book that's very meaningful?
Yeah, well, this is a little different from your typical book. It is a subversive adult storybook, Joanna, and that should be enough to get most of us reading it. Who doesn't need a subversive adult storybook? It was based off a book that I had when I was 4 years old, a little golden book called
Yeah.
The Good Little Bad Little Girl. And it had all these very traditional views about what we could do as women to be good and what we looked like when we were not so good and how we earned love. And this
Yeah.
sat in my cupboard for years. And I was like, right, it's time to see if this still, is impacting women because for me, it certainly gave me this idea that I needed to be performing perfectly and pleasing everyone and protecting others. So I'm a data nerd at heart, Joanna. So we went out, we did some research with women. Turned out it wasn't just me that was stuck in these old ideas, but that 65% of women today of all ages still struggle to break free of these ideas we have to be the good girls. So, based on the research we did with the women, we used that to seed into the little storybook narrative. And then we were blessed with an amazing illustrator, Lucia, who has done the most gorgeous illustrations to go along and these beautiful protest posters of things like, it was her body and her choice. And, pretending to be perfect, never is worth the cost and things like that that are in there to remind us to honor who we need to be these days.
Yeah. And, I was just sharing with you, I'm the mother of a 12-year-old. I'm an
Mhm.
imperfect human. I was talking to girlfriends who I've shared the book with as well. And, we're all faced with, what we grew up with, those expectations, those generational expectations. And now that we're getting older, setting boundaries and getting more comfortable with who we are. This is so good. This is so good because uh it's a cute little book, if that's okay to you. Little
Absolutely.
read,
It's
cute
a
little read.
it's a beautiful little, 5-minute read, a very playful, hopefully joyful little tongue-in-cheek reminder for us that we don't have to be these perfect girls, no matter what age we are, and that whether we're nailing it or we're falling woefully short today, that either way we will be okay, and not least because we are all perfectly imperfect in our own beautiful ways. What I loved in the book, Joanna, is the big surprise which the original book also had. The original book had a big surprise that you could make the good little girl grow taller and taller and the bad little girl smaller and smaller, and then you would be happy and loved if you made the good girl big. And so the big surprise in our book's a little different. Number one, she discovers that even on the day she's imperfect, she's just absolutely fine. And that secondly, what she learns is what's important is to help ourselves start asking on whose terms and for whose benefit am I living my wild and precious life? And knowing that it's not always only my terms and my benefit, but because we're social creatures, it's probably a bit of what you need and a bit of what I need in there, but that it can't always be at my cost. And that's what we're seeing for so many women. By the time we're sort of in our late 30s, we're starting to report feeling exhausted, little lost as to who we're meant to be, fairly resentful that everybody else keeps expecting all of this for us. And thus we thought perhaps no matter what age we were, we needed a slightly more playful way to hold
Yeah.
space for what is a really real and important conversation for
Yeah.
us.
So true. Michelle, can you tell me about what inspired you to write the book? If there's any sort of special kind of moment or special journey that you went on, and tell us anything we need to know about you as a professional, as a human. What do we need to know, Michelle?
Yeah, so I mean, besides having this book when I was a very young child and kind of scarring me and staying with me, I then went on, perhaps, not unrelated, to spend the last 20 odd years of my life studying the science of human thriving. So, what does it take for us to be well as we navigate the ups and downs of life that we all encounter? How do we sit in the struggle, knowing that's often where our most important moments of learning and growth come from? And how do we savor and celebrate the good times without that sense of foreboding joy that the rug's about to be pulled out from under us? And so, as I kept doing this work in workplaces and schools and communities, I research, I teach, I coach, I write. I kept finding that for lots of people, even though, yeah, the science made sense, they loved all the practical evidence based tools we could give them, often it was just yeah, but I'm too busy to do those things to look after my well-being. And I'm like, I get that you're busy, but we're only busy with the things we choose to prioritize. So why isn't this a priority? And as
Sure.
we kept scratching underneath the surface of that, we kept bumping up against these beliefs that we'd had as kids that society kind of said, look, you need to be a good girl and you need to be a tough guy. And therefore it's set in place all these weird priorities we're holding on to as adults, still
Yeah.
thinking like this is the way we need to be in the world. And so while the outcomes in terms of what helps us break free of these beliefs is true for both genders, we found in our research self-compassion, secure attachment to self, self-leadership with a capital S there around the internal family systems work, that these things worked no matter what gender we were, but our starting place was different. And so for the women's side of it, we have the Perfectly Imperfect Little Girl, and we also have a companion to go with it that is the Perfectly Imperfect Women's Journal, which
Yeah.
if you read the storybook, you're like, okay, how do I break free like that little girl?
Yeah.
It has all the science and practical tools that can go along with it to help guide your own journey.
Yeah, no, look, I've got a copy here. See? And
Beautiful.
there's lots of scribbles all the way through it and very
Yay.
useful. And I love that. Michelle, you've got a fabulous website. I know you're on Substack. I've seen
Yeah.
you work there. Tell us, how do we connect with you? If we're curious about the books, if we're
Yeah.
curious about you, I'll put all this in the show notes.
Amazing. So just head to thegoodgirlgamechangers.com, all one word,
Yeah.
thegoodgirlgamechangers.com. That will take you through to our Substack. We have a weekly podcast with amazing researchers around the world on these topics. You can find access to the books. We've also got some online courses and a beautiful community of women there, all breaking free from these good girl beliefs and helping each other do the same.
Awesome. Michelle, thank you so much for sharing. I recommend everyone needs to get out, get these books, husbands, kids, wives. It's readable for everybody. Embrace the imperfect little girl. I think it's definitely needed out there, Michelle. And I know you're a podcast host, so I need to get you back at some time, don't I, to
Would
share about
love
that
to
one.
talk about the podcast, Joanna, on another day.
Fabulous. Good luck with the book.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Cheers.